The house on Maple Street had learned how to be quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet that comes with rest or contentment, but the heavy, aching quiet that settles in when no one has spoken your name out loud for a very long time. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, Eleanor Whitmore woke up at exactly 5:47 a.m. She didn't need an alarm. She hadn't needed one in years. Her body simply knew when the loneliness was about to begin again. She lay still for a few moments, staring at the faint crack in the ceiling above her bed. Harold had promised to fix it once, years ago. He never did. Not because he forgot, but because life kept moving faster than intentions. Now Harold was gone. And the crack was still there. Eleanor slowly sat up, her joints protesting softly, like an old house settling in the night. She swung her feet onto the cold wooden floor and reached for her cardigan, the blue one with the loose button near the collar. She wore it every morning. It smelled faintly of lavender and something else, something she couldn't name, but that made her chest tighten every time she noticed it. Maybe memory had a scent. The house creaked as she walked down the hallway. Each sound echoed longer than it should have. No one answered back. No sleepy voice from a bedroom. No radio playing in the kitchen. No footsteps behind her. Just Eleanor. And the quiet house. The morning ritual. She filled the kettle with water and placed it on the stove. While it heated, she opened the small notebook that always sat on the kitchen table. "Good morning," she whispered, out of habit more than belief. The notebook didn't respond. She smiled anyway. The notebook was old, its edges curled and pages yellowed. On the cover, written in careful cursive, were the words, "For the days I need to talk." Eleanor had started writing in it 5 years ago. Right after the last phone call. The kettle whistled softly. She poured hot water over a single tea bag, chamomile, always chamomile, and carried the mug to the window. Outside, Maple Street was waking up. A young couple jogged past, earbuds in, laughing about something she would never hear. A delivery truck stopped 2 houses down. Somewhere, a dog barked. Life was happening. Just not inside her house. She pressed her hand against the glass, watching her reflection stare back at her. White hair pulled into a loose bun. Soft lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter long ago. And deeper ones around her mouth that came from holding words inside. "Another quiet one," she said softly. She took a sip of tea and turned on the small recorder that sat on the windowsill. It was old-fashioned, too. Most people used phones now. Eleanor still liked buttons she could feel. She pressed record. Talking to no one, and someone. "Hello, sweetheart," she began, her voice gentle and slow, like a lullaby that had learned how to wait. "I don't know if you're listening today. I never do. But I like to imagine you are." She paused. "I thought I'd tell you about my mornings. They're all very similar, you see. Same tea. Same window. Same quiet." Her voice didn't break. It never did. She had learned how to place words carefully, so they didn't fall apart in her mouth. "This house used to be loud. Oh, you should have heard it. Doors slamming. Music playing too loud. Someone always calling out from another room." She smiled at the memory. Now, even the clock sounds lonely. The ticking on the wall seemed louder, as if agreeing. Eleanor reached out and adjusted the recorder slightly closer. "I talk to you like this because silence listens too carefully. And sometimes it reminds me of things I'm not ready to think about." She took another sip of tea. "I wonder if you know how quiet a house can get when no one says your name anymore. Her fingers tightened around the mug. I still remember the last time someone said it with love. The chair that never moved. After breakfast, toast she barely touched, Eleanor moved to the living room. 2 chairs sat near the fireplace. One faced the window. The other faced her. The second chair had not moved in 3 years. She dusted it every day anyway. "Good morning, Harold," she murmured, passing it. She sat in her own chair, the one closest to the window, and pulled a thin blanket over her knees. The TV stayed off. Noise that wasn't chosen felt wrong now. Instead, she listened. To the house. To the past. To the sound of nothing happening. People often said being alone was peaceful. Eleanor had believed that once, too. Back when alone meant an afternoon to herself, not an entire lifetime shrinking down to one pair of footsteps. Loneliness wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It whispered. It showed up in small ways, like setting the table for one but still reaching for a second plate. Like turning toward a sound that never came. Like saving stories for someone who might never hear them. Eleanor reached for the photo frame on the side table. A younger version of herself smiled back, arm-linked with Harold's. They stood in front of this very house, decades ago, holding a set of keys and a future they thought would last forever. "You would have liked how quiet it is now," she said softly. "You always said we'd rest one day." Her smile faded. "I just didn't know rest would feel so much like being forgotten." The waiting. At exactly 11 a.m., Eleanor moved back to the kitchen. She wiped the counter that was already clean. Straightened the mail that had not changed. Then she sat at the table and placed her phone in front of her. She didn't touch it. She just looked at it. Every day, at 11 o'clock, she waited. It was an old habit. One she couldn't convince herself to break. Once, years ago, that was the time the phone used to ring. She remembered the sound perfectly. Bright. Alive. A reason to smile before even picking up. Now, the phone stayed dark. Eleanor folded her hands in her lap and waited anyway. Minutes passed. Her eyes flicked to the screen each time a car drove by outside, as if motion itself might somehow turn into a call. Nothing. She let out a slow breath. "It's all right," she said to the empty room. "I know you're busy." She always said that. She reached for the recorder again. "I don't blame you," she whispered into it. "Life pulls people away. I understand that." Her voice softened. "I just wish it hadn't pulled you so far." The loneliest sound. The afternoon stretched long and thin. Eleanor tried to read, but the words blurred. She tried to knit, but her hands trembled too much today. So she did the one thing that always hurt and helped at the same time. She checked the mailbox. Outside, the air was cool. Leaves crunched under her slippers. She opened the metal box slowly, as if moving too fast might scare something away. Inside were bills. A flyer. An advertisement addressed to current resident. No letters. No handwriting she recognized. She closed the box gently, as though being careful with disappointment might make it smaller. As she turned back toward the house, she heard laughter. A family across the street. A grandmother holding a small child, spinning him around while he squealed with joy, her chest tightened, sharp and sudden. Eleanor stopped walking.
Within an hour, the joint accounts I had opened for Daniel when he turned 18, accounts still legally tied to my name, were closed. Every dollar transferred back to my personal account. $73,000. Money I had saved for his future. Money I suddenly realized someone else might already be planning to use. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt alert. That night, as I sat alone in the living room surrounded by photographs of a life that now felt distant, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Mrs. Patterson," a professional voice said. "This is Jessica from the bank. We're calling about unusual login attempts on an account linked to your name." My grip tightened. Someone had tried to access the closed account, using the correct password, just hours after I shut it down. The IP address traced back to downtown Seattle, where Vanessa lived. After I hung up, the silence in the room felt different. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was about money. About isolation. About a pattern I had been too polite to see. I opened my laptop and began to dig, not emotionally, but methodically, the way I had learned to solve problems over decades in finance. Social media posts. Timelines. Old relationships. Financial inconsistencies. What I found made my blood run cold. Luxury vacations. Designer items. Expensive meals, none of it matched the income she claimed to have. Her past relationship ended abruptly just as financial trouble surfaced. And then I realized something far worse. If Vanessa believed she was marrying into money through Daniel, she was wrong. The real assets were mine. And I wasn't done protecting them. That night, I opened a new document and titled it Project Daniel. And for the first time since that message arrived, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't over. I thought uninviting me from the wedding was the worst thing my son could do. I was wrong. Because what I uncovered next would prove that this wasn't just a love story gone wrong, it was a carefully planned financial trap, and my son was standing right in the middle of it. Backhand Index Pointing Right Part 2 begins with the investigation that changed everything, and the evidence that would make my blood run cold. I slept less than 2 hours that night. Not because I was crying, but because my mind refused to rest. It kept replaying everything I had dismissed, every moment I had smoothed over in the name of peace. Every time I had chosen silence because I didn't want to be labeled difficult, intrusive, or controlling. At 4:30 a.m., I gave up on sleep altogether. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. The same table where I had once helped Daniel with math homework. Where I had balanced budgets and built futures with numbers and discipline. Now I was doing something I had never imagined I'd need to do. I was investigating the woman my son planned to marry. Not because I wanted to. Because something was wrong, and pretending otherwise would be unforgivable. I started with what I knew. Vanessa claimed to be a social media consultant. I'd smiled politely when she said it, though the title had always felt vague. Consulting implied clients, contracts, income streams. But her online presence told a different story. Designer handbags appeared regularly. Weekend trips that cost more than my monthly groceries. Restaurants where a single meal could have paid a utility bill. That kind of lifestyle didn't come from posting sponsored photos twice a week. I didn't jump to conclusions. I followed facts. I traced timelines. Posts stopped abruptly featuring one man, older, affluent, then resumed 2 weeks later with Daniel. The overlap was suspicious. The speed was alarming. By mid-morning, I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone objective, professional, someone who wouldn't soften the truth to spare my feelings. That afternoon, I called my attorney. Gerald had known me for over 20 years. He'd handled my husband's estate. He'd watched Daniel grow up through framed photos on my desk during meetings. When I finished explaining everything, the engagement, the uninvitation, the bank login attempt, there was a long pause on the line. "Margaret," he said finally, carefully, "what are you hoping to accomplish?" "I want to protect my son," I replied. "Even if he hates me for it." Another pause. "Then we need information," he said. "Real information. Not suspicion." He recommended a private investigator. Discreet. Experienced in financial abuse cases. I hesitated. The idea felt invasive. Like crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But then I remembered the login attempt. And the way Vanessa had answered Daniel's phone. And the message that told me not to come to my own child's wedding. Give me the name, I said. 2 days later, Rachel Torres sat across from me in my living room. She wasn't what I expected. No trench coat, no hardened edge. She looked like a woman who had lived a lot of life, calm, steady, eyes alert but kind. I need to be honest with you, she said after I explained everything. What I find may hurt. Are you prepared for that? I nodded. I need the truth. She worked quickly. Too quickly. On the second day, she called and asked me to come to her office instead of discussing findings over the phone. That's when I knew. People don't request in-person meetings for good news. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Documents were spread across the table before I even sat down. She slid the first one toward me. A credit report. Vanessa has $47,000 in credit card debt, Rachel said. Most of it accumulated in the last 18 months. Several accounts are in collections. I stared at the numbers. They didn't match the lifestyle. Not even close. Next came a court document. Eviction notice, Rachel continued. 4 months before she met your son. I felt cold. Then came photographs. Timelines. Annotated screenshots. She was financially supported by her previous partner, Rachel said. When his finances collapsed, the relationship ended immediately. 2 weeks later, Daniel appeared in her posts. My stomach twisted. There's more, Rachel said gently. She slid another document toward me. A loan application. In Daniel's name. For $50,000. I felt my breath leave my body. She applied 3 weeks ago, Rachel continued. It was denied. But the contact information? Her email. Her phone number. And Daniel? I whispered. There's no indication he knew, Rachel said. The signature doesn't match his records. This is fraud. Fraud. The word echoed in my head like a bell. My son wasn't just engaged to the wrong woman. He was being used. Then Rachel showed me the final piece. Wedding paperwork. She told the venue coordinator she needed to be married before the end of the month because of inheritance requirements, Rachel explained. That's impossible, I said. There is no such inheritance. I know, Rachel replied. That's the point. I sat back in my chair, the room tilting slightly. This wasn't a rushed wedding because of love. It was a deadline. Someone was racing against time. Why? I asked. Rachel folded her hands. Marriage creates access. Benefits. Shared financial authority. Legal leverage. Whatever she's planning becomes much easier once she's legally tied to him. I drove home in silence. That evening, I did something that broke my heart and strengthened my resolve at the same time. I drafted a formal letter. Not emotional. Not accusatory. Legal. It outlined the findings. The risks. The consequences. And it offered a meeting, one last chance for Daniel to see the truth. We sent it certified mail. The next morning, my phone rang. Vanessa's voice exploded through the speaker. You have some nerve, she snapped. Sending legal threats before our wedding. So she had intercepted the letter. Of course she had. That letter was for Daniel, I said calmly. You're a bitter, controlling woman who can't stand being replaced, she shouted. Stay away from us or I'll get a restraining order. Based on what? I asked. She hung up. I sat there, heart pounding, not from fear, but realization. I had touched a nerve. She was panicking. And panicked people make mistakes. Over the next 48 hours, I locked everything down. Trust documents updated. Inheritance protected. Co-signatures removed. Financial ties severed. I filed a police report, not expecting immediate action, but creating a record. Then, late one evening, my doorbell rang. Daniel stood on my porch. And Vanessa was with him. She held his arm tightly, as if afraid he might drift away if she loosened her grip. We need to talk, Daniel said. Inside, she accused me of abuse. Of sabotage. Of lies. I asked one question. Daniel, did you authorize a $50,000 loan in your name? His face went blank. What loan? For the first time, Vanessa lost control of the room. I handed him the folder and watched doubt flicker across his face. She demanded he choose her or me. And in the end, he left with her. But he left the folder behind. And doubt doesn't disappear once it's born. I thought showing Daniel the evidence would end everything. I was wrong. Because what happened next wasn't confrontation, it was psychological warfare. And Vanessa was about to make a move so desperate, so reckless, that it would expose her entire scheme. Backhand Index Pointing Right Part 3 reveals the ultimatum that nearly cost me my son forever, and the mistake that finally cracked her mask. After Daniel walked out of my house that night, the silence he left behind was heavier than any argument we'd had. I didn't chase him. That restraint cost me more than he would ever know. Every instinct in my body screamed to run after him, to grab his arm, to beg him to stay and think. But I had already learned the most painful truth about manipulation. When someone is controlling another person, any pressure from the outside only strengthens the grip. So I sat down, alone, and waited. The folder he'd left on my coffee table lay open, the pages slightly bent from where he'd gripped them. Evidence of doubt. Proof that something inside him had cracked, even if he wasn't ready to admit it. I made tea I didn't drink and stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. No calls. No messages. The next 3 days passed like a test of endurance. I forced myself into routines, watering the garden, folding laundry, answering emails, anything to stop my mind from spiraling. I didn't contact Daniel. Not once. I knew Vanessa would twist any message from me into proof of harassment. Instead, I documented everything. Every voicemail from unknown numbers. Every threatening text. Every email dripping with false warmth. Because then it happened. For days after the confrontation, an email arrived with the subject line, Olive Branch. I almost laughed. The message was long, carefully worded, and painfully transparent once you knew what to look for. Vanessa wrote about stress. About misunderstandings. about how deeply Daniel was suffering because of family conflict. Then came the ask: $30,000 to cover remaining wedding expenses. In return, I would be welcomed back. Front row. Mother of the groom. Smiles for photos. A second chance at belonging. She even offered a prenup, framed as a generous concession, to make it all seem reasonable. I forwarded the email to Gerald with one line. Your thoughts? He called me within the hour. She's desperate, he said bluntly. And she's lying. The amount she requested matched her outstanding debt almost exactly. The prenup draft she attached was cleverly written, but dangerously misleading. It actually exposes Daniel to her liabilities, Gerald explained. If he signs this, she gains legal access to anything he inherits and makes him responsible for her debts after 2 years. The call came at 6:12 a.m. I was already awake. I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time since Vanessa's ultimatum. Every worst-case scenario replayed itself in my head on a loop, but nothing prepared me for the sound of Daniel's voice when I answered. He didn't say hello. He said, "Mom, I don't know who I'm marrying." There was no anger in his tone. No defensiveness. Just fear. Raw and unfiltered. I sat up slowly, gripping the edge of the bed. "Where are you?" "At the hotel," he said. "She's still asleep." I went through the documents Rachel sent me. Rachel. So he had trusted someone. That alone told me this was serious. "I found accounts I didn't know existed," he continued. "Credit cards in my name. Loans I never signed for. And withdrawals, large ones, right after we got engaged." My chest tightened. This wasn't just manipulation. This was fraud. "Daniel," I said carefully, "listen to me. Whatever you've discovered, you don't need to solve it alone." He exhaled shakily. "That's the thing. Every time I question her, she says it's my fault for not trusting her. That I'm sabotaging our future. She says you put these ideas in my head." Of course she did. "She told me if I didn't go through with today," he said, voice cracking, "she'd tell everyone I abandoned her. That I ruined her life." I closed my eyes. This was the real trap. Public shame. Emotional blackmail. Fear of being the villain. "Daniel," I said softly, "do you remember what I asked you at my house?" Silence. Then, barely audible, "If I believed you lied." "Yes," I said. "I'm asking you again. After everything you've seen, do you still think I did?" Another pause. Then the sound of something shattering. I later realized it was a glass. "No," he whispered. "I don't." That single word undid months of control. "I want you to do something," I said. "Not for me. For yourself. Delay the wedding. Even by a few hours. Anyone who truly loves you will understand." "She won't," he said immediately. "I know," I replied. "And that tells you everything." The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, heart racing, knowing one thing with terrifying clarity. Today would change everything. The venue. By 9 a.m., the venue was buzzing. Florists rushed in and out. Chairs were being aligned. Music rehearsed softly in the background. I wasn't invited. But I came anyway. Not to interfere. To witness. I stayed in my car across the street, watching guests arrive dressed in light colors, unaware they were walking into a storm. At 10:17 a.m., Vanessa emerged from the building. She was already in her dress. It was immaculate. Perfectly tailored. Radiant. And furious. She paced while barking into her phone, her smile snapping on and off depending on who walked by. That's when I knew. Daniel hadn't shown up. At 10:45, the whispers began. At 11 o'clock, the officiant stepped aside. At 11:12, Vanessa screamed. I heard it from the car. Pure rage. No restraint. She stormed outside, scanning the street, eyes wild. When she saw my car, she froze. Then she marched toward me. I rolled the window down. "You did this," she hissed. "No," I said calmly. "You did." She leaned closer. "He's mine. He'll come back. He always does." That's when Daniel's car pulled up. He stepped out slowly, dressed but disheveled. Tie loose. Eyes red. Everyone turned. Vanessa spun around, instantly transforming. Tears appeared on command. "There you are," she cried. I was so worried. Daniel didn't move toward her. Instead, he walked past her. Straight to me. The gasp from the crowd was audible. He stopped beside my car and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She opened accounts in my name." Vanessa's face drained of color. "She forged signatures," he continued. "She isolated me from my family. And she threatened me when I tried to leave." Silence fell like a hammer. "This wedding isn't happening," he said. Vanessa laughed. A sharp, broken sound. "You're having a breakdown," she snapped. "Your mother poisoned you against me." Daniel finally looked at her. "No," he said. "You did." She lunged for him. Security stepped in. Guests began backing away. Three months passed. Long enough for the shock to fade, not long enough for the damage to heal. Daniel was rebuilding slowly. Therapy twice a week. Lawyers during the day. Silence at night. Some wounds don't scream. They just sit with you. Vanessa was quiet. Too quiet. Her lawyers stalled. Court dates were pushed. Paperwork crawled. She never showed up in person, only through sharply worded emails and motions designed to exhaust, not resolve. "That worries me," Rachel said one afternoon, spreading files across my kitchen table. "When people like her go silent, they're planning." She was right. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Not from a lawyer. From Vanessa. Handwritten. Daniel froze when he saw the envelope. His name, written in that familiar looping script that once meant love and now meant danger. "I don't want to read it," he said. "I will," I replied. Inside was one page. "You think you won, you humiliated me, you took everything. But you forgot one thing. I know where the money really is." My stomach dropped. Rachel looked up sharply. "What money?" Daniel swallowed. "Before I left, she convinced me to move some investments. Said it was safer. Offshore. Temporary." "How much?" I asked. He didn't answer. Rachel did the math from his expression alone. "Enough to destroy you if she controls the narrative." That night, Vanessa made her move. A lawsuit. Not criminal. Civil. She claimed Daniel was complicit. That the accounts were mutual. That he benefited. That I coerced him into abandoning her to avoid repayment. And the final blow. She named me as a co-conspirator. The media loved it. Jilted bride exposes wealthy family scheme, mother and son accused of financial abuse. Daniel spiraled. I brought this on you, he said, pacing. I should have just disappeared. She's never going to stop. I took his hands. She will, I said. Because she made one mistake. What? She put everything in writing. Rachel smiled for the first time in weeks. The discovery phase was brutal. But it was also precise. Vanessa's accounts were subpoenaed. Emails recovered. Voice notes extracted. Patterns mapped. And then came the recording. An old backup from Daniel's laptop. A file he didn't even remember existed. Vanessa's voice, clear as day. If you ever leave, I'll destroy you. I'll make sure everyone thinks you stole from me. No one will believe you. The room went silent. Rachel closed her laptop slowly. That's it. The hearing lasted 6 hours. Vanessa sat across the room, composed, dressed in soft colors, eyes shining with practiced victimhood. Until the recording played. Her face collapsed. Not into tears. Into rage. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The ruling was swift. The lawsuit was dismissed, the evidence was referred back to the criminal court, and for the first time, Vanessa wasn't the one controlling the room. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Daniel said nothing. I did. My son trusted the wrong person, I said calmly. That happens. What matters is that the truth doesn't stay buried forever. Vanessa was arrested 2 weeks later. Multiple counts, multiple victims. No settlements this time. When the sentence came, Daniel didn't attend. We were at home, cooking dinner. The phone rang. Rachel's voice was steady. It's done. He closed his eyes. Not in relief. In release. Later that night, he stood on the porch, the same place where months ago he'd asked me why I didn't give her the money. I get it now, he said quietly. You didn't just save me financially. I waited. You saved my life, he finished. I put my arm around him. Sometimes love isn't giving in, sometimes it's standing still while everything burns, and trusting that truth will eventually do what lies never can. Vanessa thought control was forever. She was wrong. Because the one thing she never owned was us.